This just came in the mail, which means the countdown has just begun because I've got a Zelos Mako to review. Now, I don't know exactly which one it is. You guys probably do because you saw the thumbnail, but I do know that this is already live on their site, so hopefully the one they sent me isn't sold out. Let's open it up and take a look. All right, so it looks like they sent me over the mother of pearl blue dial. And that is a really beautiful blue dial. Now, I do need to mention that Zelos did give me this watch for free for the review. However, other than the watch itself, I did not receive any compensation from Zelos, nor did they have any input into the content of this review. They also say that they have done C3 X1 grade super luminova on this, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a lume test on this as quick as I can. I believe my current brightest watch that I've ever measured is another Zelos, so we'll see how that compares to this one. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and resize this. I'm going to spend a couple of hours with it, probably the rest of the day, try and do the lume test tonight, and then finish up this review in the next 2 days so I can get it out to you guys, hopefully before this one sells out. So, we'll be right back. Okay, so we are in fact looking at the new Mako Titanium Mother of Pearl dial is the one that they sent over. And this is the first time I've gotten to take a look at one of Zelos's kind of premium dials. It's not a big premium, it's about $20 more than their standard dials, but I have never seen even pictures of a Mother of Pearl dial that looks like this. This is just an incredible dial. Very unique. I just absolutely love the way that it can be so subdued in some lighting and then just really come alive in a really cool and unique way in other lighting. But this one, the colors that it comes out with, it reminds me either of, like, you know, flying over the ocean at night, if you've ever seen the ocean from high altitude, flying on a plane, this kind of dark ripples going across it, or even looking out into a nebula in the galaxy, are the two images that it really reminds me of when I saw it. This watch is a little bit smaller proportion than a lot of Zelos's other watches, so it's going to wear really well for a wide range of wrists, and I think that's one of the reasons why it is one of their most popular lines. And we'll talk about the fact that this is a titanium watch. Dimensions, as I measure it, you're getting just slightly over 40 millimeters, maybe 40.5 millimeters going across the bezel, 20 millimeter lugs, 46 millimeter lug to lug. However, on the bracelet, it does have male end links, which is going to extend that a little bit. If you count the end links, it jumps up to about 52 millimeters at the widest point. And then the thickness is kind of tricky on this. It has a very high domed sapphire crystal. So if you go from the top of that domed crystal to the case back, you're running at 14 millimeters. However, if you go to the top of the bezel to the case back, it's closer to 12, which is really what this wears like. They put a Miyota 90-15 movement inside of this, which is a very slim movement. It allows them to get the case of the watch down pretty slim, which is really impressive when you consider this is also a 300 meter water resistance dive watch. And it doesn't get up to that full 14 millimeter thickness until you get to the very apex of that domed crystal. And that domed sapphire crystal is a really beautiful aspect of the watch. It's so big that it almost looks like a bubble going over the entire top of the watch, and yet everything is proportioned well, so it just has a really sleek look. I feel like that crystal combined with the case design that they've done on this gives the watch kind of a very organic look that really does lean into these kind of shark metaphors that Zelos uses on a lot of their designs. To me, the most defining feature of the case is the crown side. So it is an asymmetrical case. On the crown side of the watch, there's this kind of bulge that has a lot of facets and bevels on it that comes around and sort of guards one half of the crown, whereas the opposite side is a lot flatter, a lot more simple. So kind of interesting casework that they've done there. Overall, I feel like this is not as flashy as some of Zelos's other pieces in the case design and the size. It is a little bit more modest, and I like that about it. And I think they've kind of simplified the dial as well. On previous versions of the Mako, they had extra larger dots on the dial and numbers, whereas this case, they've really moved that kind of out to a chapter ring and then kept the dial pretty clean with these sort of arrow-shaped markers at 12, 3, and 9, and then a 6 o'clock date. All of the markers are applied, and one thing I forgot to mention earlier, the lume is insane on this watch. You're getting C3 X1 grade lume on the hour markers, on the minute and hour hand, and then the second hand I believe has BGW9. It's a two-tone effect, so you get a little bit of a blue accent on that second hand. Then the bezel is also fully lumed, I believe also with C3 X1. So what that Lume formulation is going to give you, everything does have a little bit of a green tint to it. It is an off-white color because that's what C3X1 looks like. However, the benefit to using this Lume is that in the dark, it is going to outlast basically any other Lume formulation, and the method and the thickness with which they've applied this makes it one of the better implementations of C3X1 that I have seen. The bezel is also ceramic. On this one, it's kind of a navy blue. It's a little bit of a dull color. The action is good. The bezel action is very solid. It is very well defined. It is very, I don't know, almost chunky in a way. It's not the most pleasant bezel that I've ever used, even if it is a solid bezel. You get good definition on the clicks, but it feels a little bit rough, a little bit grating, and there is a tiny bit of play on the bezel, but not much. I'm not sure if it's because they use a titanium bezel that it feels different from other bezels I've tried from Zelos, or if it's something related to the Mako line, given that this is the first Mako that I've had a chance to review. Now let's get to the dial on this watch, because that was one of the things that I just absolutely loved. This is my first time seeing a mother of pearl dial, and again, judging from pictures and videos of other watches I've done and researching for this, I've never seen this effect on a dial before. I didn't know that mother of pearl came in this color, and I'm not sure if they have kind of applied some sort of a blue coloring over it to get it to do this, or if this is some natural seashell that has this kind of iridescence on it. Now, mother of pearl is a natural material, which means that you're going to get some variation from dial to dial. Mine has kind of a deep navy background with hues of purple and green and kind of turquoise coming in depending on how the light hits it. In some lighting, the dial looks completely dull, almost like a blue clay, almost like a mud, almost an ugly color. But then as soon as a little bit of light hits it in certain areas, it just absolutely comes alive in an amazing and beautiful way. Again, it reminds me of the surface of the ocean, or looking out into, pictures of faraway galaxies and nebula that you see from the Hubble telescope. I love the fact that it kind of hides its full brilliance from the general public most of the time. This is not a flashy looking bezel all of the time. It's only in certain lightings, and so probably it's not something that's going to attract too much wrist attention from passerbys, but when you look at it and when you show it to people, I think that's when it becomes really impressive, and I love that aspect of the dial as well. The standard dial on this, I've heard great things about. I haven't seen one before myself, but it has a whirlpool effect that is also very stunning, so check out some other videos online. I believe Shane reviewed one of those on his channel a while back on the previous version, so if you want to look at that dial, check out Relative Time. I'll leave a link to his video down below. Now, there's a few more features we need to talk about this watch. Perhaps most importantly is the material it's made of. This is a titanium watch, and that means that it is going to be significantly lighter than a stainless steel watch that's of the same composition and size. This one does not feel shockingly light. It still has a substantial heft to it. The end result, I believe, of the titanium is, in this case, it's just more comfortable. And for me, the biggest thing that I like about titanium watches, with that reduced weight, it doesn't tend to move around my wrist as much. So I can wear them a little bit looser, and it's just more comfortable all the way around. The color of this watch is a slightly duller gray than you would get typically with stainless steel, and yet Zelos has done some really beautiful brushing and polishing work on it, so I think that kind of gives it a little bit more of an elegant look. Additionally, Zelos has put a hardening treatment on top of this one, which should allow it to maintain that brushing and polishing for a while longer. Typically, titanium begins to oxidize and then will easily pick up scratches on that oxidation, which is a feature of titanium. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a visual thing that people don't always like. So adding that hardening treatment to this watch sort of delays that, and it's a nice little upgrade. Another thing that is amazing about this watch, and has become a common feature across Zelos' dive watches, is the clasp that they have included. The clasp operates very smoothly. It's a dual push-button deployant clasp that is, I believe, made out of stainless steel, not titanium. But the real cool trick to this one is that it features a ratcheting tool-free micro adjust on it. Once you get a watch on a bracelet that has this feature on it, it's really hard to wear other metal bracelets and to lose that functionality. It is one of the biggest improvements to the overall user experiences to a dive watch that I've seen, and it allows you to just always have a perfectly comfortable, perfectly sized watch, even being able to adjust it throughout the day as your wrist size changes. Finally, this watch also features quick release spring bars for the bracelet. It's another newer feature that I'm starting to see on more and more watches, but it really makes changing bracelets and changing straps much easier. So also a very nice feature to see. Inside, this watch is featuring again the Miyota 9015 movement. This is one of my favorite movements at this price range. It is a premium movement. You often find it in watches in the $400 and up price range. It typically has higher accuracy than entry-level movements from Seiko and Miyota, and it has a smoother sweeping second hand. So this one ticks at 8 beats per second instead of your standard 6. The only downside to it, it is a unidirectional winding rotor, which means that you can feel the rotor in the watch spinning on its own when you move sharply. I don't tend to mind that too much. It's not too noticeable, but it is noticeable compared to, the smoother bidirectional movements you would find in those Swiss Solita or ETA movement watches, or even in the Seiko NH35 series. All right, let's talk about the lume on this watch, which is outstanding, and it's really cool to kind of pair that lume up with this dial. You talk about leaning into that kind of space theme. When you start to see this dial loomed up with like a nebula in the background, it's just such a cool look, and I love what they've done with this, especially putting that really bright C3X1 green lume onto the watch. If you guys have been following the channel, you know recently I came up with a scoring system to be able to kind of more objectively rank how powerful lume is on watches. So I pitted this watch up against not only the Seiko Samurai, but my current champion, which is another Zelos, the Zelos Horizons 43. And the Zelos Horizons 43 did beat this watch out, but only barely. When I ran the test this time, the Zelos Mako 3 came out with a score of 15, which means that it is 50% brighter than the Seiko Samurai, compared to the 16 that the Zelos Horizons scored. So incredibly bright lume that is going to last all night long. So this watch currently is available for $469. If you're not familiar with the way that Zelos sells watches, here's how it works. They do limited runs of their watches. In this case, there were 400 of this mother of pearl dial produced, so I assume there's probably about 400 of the other variants as well. Once those sell out, Zelos basically never does that exact same watch again. They might do it in a different material, they might do different colors, they might tweak it and upgrade it and come out with a newer version, but typically they sell out of the watches. Their pricing is also interesting. Usually for the first month or so, they have a discounted price for people who want to buy the watch, and any that do not sell out within that first month, they go up to the full retail price. So currently, this one is available for $469. It will not be available for $469 for very long. Either it will sell out or the price will increase. At $469, I feel like this is an absolutely amazing deal. To get a fully featured titanium watch with this kind of lume, with this kind of clasp, with the Miyota 9015 movement inside of it, there's just really no other competition out there. So value-wise, this is just an incredible deal. Now, there are a few negatives here, but they are very small negatives. I almost feel like I'm nitpicking at this point, but here we go. I mentioned before the bezel action is not the smoothest. It feels a little bit grating, a little bit gritty, even if it is very solid and well aligned. That can kind of be said for the clasp as well. Actuating the buttons just feels, just a little bit rougher than I'm normally used to, but in a very minor way. Overall, the clasp is pretty good. Also, the ratcheting extension on this one did feel a tiny bit loose at its fully extended position. And then going from the design perspective, the one thing that I don't particularly like about this watch is the thinness of the hands. I feel like for a dive watch, they should be a little bit thicker. And in this case, because they've gone with the polished hands that really kind of disappears in a lot of lighting, especially against that dark mother of pearl dial, oftentimes the only thing that you can easily pick out is the lumed portion, which again is a little bit on the thin side. It's kind of a cool, sleek look, but yeah, for legibility purposes and to even amp up that lume even more, I would have liked to see those hands a little bit thicker, a little bit bolder, instead of the kind of slender sword-shaped hands that they did. So those are my negatives of this watch. If those things don't bother you, if you've seen this watch and you're really drawn to it, I definitely recommend that you pick it up soon because, again, it is either going to sell out or the price is going to jump up. Now, one thing that is interesting, this one being a run of 400 pieces is larger than Zelos typically does. It's good to see them doing that. It feels like they have a little bit more confidence. And so I do suspect that this one will last a little bit longer. In this case, it's been a few days and a few variants have sold out, but the mother of pearl one and most of the other standard colors are still available. Now, if you are not interested in a watch, but you're interested maybe in a watch t-shirt, definitely head over to my t-shirt shop. I've got this one, I've got the one I was wearing at the beginning of this video, and a lot of other ones that I've put together. They're available to you guys, so go check it out and pick one up. But that's gonna wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. Drop me a comment down below, let me know what you think, and we'll see you later. Bye.